What is up, guys? Welcome back to another GeekaWhat video, and in today's video I'm going to be building one of the most exciting but perhaps one of the most pointless gaming PCs I've ever put together. Have AMD killed the RTX 3090 with the most paper of paper launches? Oh god. Either way, I hope you enjoy this video. Let's get this build put together and let's find out. After a quick word from today's video sponsor. This video has been made possible by Voidu, one of the best sites on the web to get official game keys you can trust at great value prices. With Voidu, you can be sure of a wide range of titles at some great deals, and they've got in touch to partner with the channel and give you guys some fantastic offers. Not only can my European, US, Canadian and UK viewers get 10% off in the whole store with code GeekaWhat10 on your screen now, but worldwide viewers can get €5 or $5 of cash back on their first purchase using GeekaWhat10. Voidu are going to give you €5 or $5 for literally just buying your first title. They've also lined up some great deals for you guys this week, with more to follow next week. You can get 50% off Assetto Corsa Ultimate Edition, you can get a massive 60% off Resident Evil 2, and if that wasn't enough, you can get a whopping 67% off Resident Evil 3, and I'll link all those games in the description below, with competitive pricing, official keys, instant deliveries, and all of the awesome games you could want to play on both PC and console. Voidu have got you covered. Big thanks to them for making today's video possible. Check them out at the links below. As always, I'm going to kick things off by installing as many components into the motherboard as possible. I've actually gone for one of MSI's highest end B550 boards. This is the B550 Tomahawk board. We've used it plenty of times on the channel, and with support for Ryzen 5000 series out the box now on new units, you're good to go. I'm going to couple this motherboard with AMD's Ryzen 5 5600X. We've used their new Ryzen 7 and even Ryzen 9 5900X chips, but for just a gaming build, this is going to be more than good enough, and the 5600X is a really powerful CPU, as I'm sure you'll see in our gaming benchmarks later. We're just going to pull up the retention arm on the CPU socket, lining up the triangle on our CPU today with the corresponding triangle on the top left corner of our motherboard socket. That brings us on to the next component today, our RAM. This 32GB 3600MHz kit is going to be great for gaming in 2021. You probably want to go for more than 16GB of RAM with a graphics card of this caliber, and this kit with its dual channel performance from Corsair and of course a little bit of RGB is going to be spot on for our build today. It's very similar to the Vengeance RGB Pro, but it's just a slightly updated version. Though for up-to-date pricing and availability on all the components discussed today, check out the links in the description below and the build article over on our website in the card section now. We're just going to pull back all of the clips on our RAM DIMM slots on the motherboard and go ahead and slide the RAM into place. Do this DIMM by DIMM, applying even pressure to each side of the RAM stick, if you will. And just like that, the motherboard, CPU, and our RAM today are ready to go. There is one more component we're going to install into the motherboard before we move it into the case, and that's actually our M.2 NVMe drive today. When it comes to storage in a build like this, it's all down to personal preference, but one thing I would always recommend is a fast NVMe drive for your Windows boot up drive, your most frequently used files, and of course, your favorite games. This is the Seagate Firecuda 520 series. It comes included with Seagate's 3-year data recovery, which is awesome for peace of mind, and with super fast Gen 4 NVMe speeds, you are not going to be disappointed. To install any SSD, you can't use a normal size screwdriver. Oh no, you need a teeny tiny screwdriver. Boom, there we go. Now, to actually pop the M.2 drive in, take out the M.2 fastener screw. This is what keeps your M.2 drive nice and secure, and go ahead and slide the NVMe drive into this slot. You may want to do this at a 45-degree angle rather than straight down, as that's just going to make it a little bit easier. And with that, our entire motherboard assembly today with our CPU, RAM, motherboard, and storage is all nice and complete. We're basically halfway there. Now we're going to move our motherboard into our case choice next up, before we go ahead and install the graphics card and the other components. In terms of the case choice today, I've gone for a chassis from MSI. Now, I've used this case a couple of times before and actually been pretty impressed with it. It's their Sekira 100R, and here it is. Now this case is crammed with fans, so that does help kind of offset the glass and metal finish, though you do get some airflow down the sides. The top is all completely ventilated as well, but we will of course test our CPU and our GPU temps a little bit later, which will be a true kind of indication as to how well this case copes when it comes to cooling. For our overall build aesthetic today. Now we're going to install our actual motherboard first off, and to do this we just need to check the case is set up and ready to go for this particular motherboard. And what I mean by that is you want to go ahead and locate each of the 9 screw holes through your motherboard in rows of 3, and then you want to line these up with the corresponding standoffs installed in our case. These are what stop the motherboard from grounding out on the metal backplate, and you can see here we've got 3 at the top, we've got 3 across the middle row, and then a further 3 at the bottom. So we're all good and ready to go. The motherboard's got a built-in AIO shield as well, which is super useful. That means you haven't got to worry about that, and all we really need to do now is slide the motherboard into place. A couple of the standoffs are slightly raised as well, which will hold the motherboard at least temporarily into place while you secure it through the 9 standoff holes. And with that, the next component to install today is our CPU cooler. Now you could go for an air cooler, that would look fine in a build like this, but this 240mm liquid cooler from MSI is pretty extraordinary value actually. It's really well priced, and the pump is actually built into the radiator, not to the block of the CPU, which is quite a cool addition and should help with lifespan of your cooler as well as noise over time and all that sort of stuff. It does come with a couple of addressable RGB fans as well, which we love. And our build, I think actually today, is gonna look, I can't get into this box, it's gonna look awesome. Come on, there we go. The first thing I'm gonna do with our radiator is actually go ahead and screw this into the top of the case, which will hold our actual pump into place so we can screw it onto our CPU that little bit easier. The dragon on the CPU cooler AIO, not pump I should say, but water block, actually spins as well, which is really cool, and make sure it's always the right orientation in your system, which is a nice kind of attention to detail from MSI. Installing the actual CPU water block onto an AMD Ryzen motherboard is pretty easy. All you need to do is grab this bracket and then slide it around the bottom of the water block. There we go, a little something like that. You're then going to take these brackets, and these actually go ahead and clip over the pre-installed stock mounting hardware that's already on your AMD Ryzen motherboard. It's just those 2 plastic brackets which are notched at either side. It's then a case of just screwing the cooler down and we're good to go. Add the extra fans onto the radiator that come included, and our CPU cooler is nicely complete. And with that complete, it's now time to install the graphics card. Now I know I've poked fun at AMD in the title of this video, you know, saying that this might be the most pointless gaming PC I've ever built. I really wanted to get hands on with the 6900 XT, and I've heard great things, so hold out for the gaming benchmarks in just a second. But this card is literally impossible to buy. I know the 3000 series are out of stock everywhere, but all of us in the office seem to know someone who's got hands on with a 3000 card. I know absolutely nobody who's managed to get their hands on a 6900 XT from a retailer either here in the US or over in the UK. Now the box is pretty cool. It kind of says, welcome to the red team. I quite like that, nice attention to detail. And here is the GPU itself. It's kind of virtually indistinguishable compared to the 6800 that we tested, at least visually, although this is a really heavy graphics card, and I think looks design-wise absolutely awesome. You get the red kind of AMD accent color around the top of the graphics card. Won't be to everyone's taste, but for our MSI and AMD themed build today, I think it's gonna look awesome. 3 fans also are pretty quiet, keep the GPU nice and cool, and are coupled with a really quite dense black heatsink, which helps to disperse some of our heat. A wraparound metal backplate looks awesome, and all in all, for a top-end GPU, this is one sleek-looking unit. Now, we are, of course, going to mount our graphics card horizontally, a little something like this, so our tubes are going to have to budge out the way a bit. But to do this, we just need to remove a couple of our PCIe slot covers at the back of the chassis. Specifically, it's the 2nd and 3rd slots, so we'll go ahead and do that now. I really do hope that AMD can kind of sort out their supply situation, as from what we're hearing, it is a lot less than the Nvidia side. The GPU market's obviously a mess right now, and I understand your guys' frustration with me building systems like this that you just simply can't buy. The GPU then slots into our motherboard nice and easily, a little something like this, and secures nicely into place. All that leaves us to do then is get our graphics card plugged up, all our front panel cables, and all that good stuff. I'm not going to cover each cable, you know, one by one, but in terms of the power supply, we've gone for the Cooler Master MWE 750 Gold. With only 2 8-pin power connectors, this card's really power efficient, which is never something I thought I'd say about an AMD graphics card all those years ago. Let's get our power cables, our front panel connectors, and everything else nicely plugged up, and then see just how good this system looks when it's all powered up in an epic glam montage. Roll the montage! Alright then, now we've seen just how good this system looks when it's all powered up, let us take a dive and see exactly how it performs. On your screen now is a summary, a snapshot view of all the titles we tested out and the numbers we got. And you can check out the full and edited benchmark runs of all titles on your screen now in the cards section in the top right hand corner. You can also check out our dedicated 6900 XT review linked down in the description below as well for some nice graphs and comparisons. Specifically though, let's take a look at some of our titles in a bit more detail, starting off with GTA 5. At 4K high settings tested in the game's inbuilt benchmarking mode, we got 112, 103 and 89 FPS for the average 90 and 99th percentile results. We of course tested both Call of Duties as well today. Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, the Zombies mode at 4K high settings gave us 94, 87 and 73 FPS, while the slightly older but still very popular Call of Duty Warzone title gave us very similar figures, 96, 84 and 74 for the average 90th and 99th percentile result metrics. We also of course tested the likes of Apex Legends, and here once again we got some great results. Specifically at 1440p high settings first off, around 184 frames per second on average, while dropping down to 4K shaves about 60 frames per second off our average 90 and 99th percentile figures. Next up today then is Valorant at 1440p high settings. This card gave us over 400 frames per second. The 6900 XT is a rasterization beast. 406 and 388 for the 90 and 99th percentile results were also really strong. That brings us on to the penultimate title today, Cyberpunk, before we go ahead and test Fortnite. Here, the lack of any AMD DLSS equivalent, at least at the moment, really does hurt us. 1440p medium is pretty good with 98, 82 and 68, with obviously no ray tracing or anything coming into the equation here. Jump up to 4K resolution in Cyberpunk 2077 and the numbers get a bit painful. 58, 51 and 45 for the average 90 and 99th percentile result is not really that great a showing. Fortnite then is the final game we tested today, and I'm going to cover some 1440p high numbers before we look at 1080p competitive settings. Here, the lack of DLSS doesn't really rear its head with 233 FPS on average at 1440p high settings, so it goes to show how good this card could become with a DLSS kind of equivalent, while 1080p competitive settings brings in an impressive 314 frames per second on average. That is 1080p with everything tuned to low and the render distance set to far, but nevertheless that's still over 300 FPS on average, which is kind of bonkers. And on that note, that pretty much wraps it up for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.